My name's Dr. Sean, and I'm the Nerd Doctor, here to diagnose what's wrong with your RPG game and here to help you fix it. But first, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button if you like the content. Leave a comment about any mechanics from Index Card RPG you'd like to hear me go into more detail on in the future. But seriously, I don't claim to be an expert on RPGs. For that, I refer to places like the Dungeon Coach, Luke at DM's Lair, Professor Dungeon Master over at Dungeon Craft, Nerd Immersion, and guys over at Nerdarchy. And the biggest influence for this video is Hankrin from Runehammer and his creation, Index Card RPG. I wrote everything I wanted to talk about for this video, and then one of my favorite streamers, Professor Dungeon Master at Dungeon Craft, came out with a video about it. Now, Professor Dungeon Master's video is more about the specific mechanics of ICRPG and going through the new Masters Edition that just came out this month, whereas I'm going to be doing a compare and contrast of D&D and ICRPG. But I highly recommend checking out his video if you want to hear more about it. See link below. But all the YouTubers I mentioned have been huge inspirations for my games. And before I get started, I'll just give a full disclaimer that I realize that this is just my opinion and that plenty of people may disagree with me. But the cons that I'm going to be talking about in D&D are things not only I've experienced, but things I've heard all these other successful YouTubers and gamers talk about. And I see a lot of these problems fixed by Index Card RPG. So let's start off with the pros of D&D because D&D was my first big introduction to RPGs. Number one, source material. Is there any other system that has more source books, worlds, classes, races, spells, and stories? Honestly, I don't know, but Wizards of the Coast have given us more campaigns than most people can get through in one lifetime. This also means you have a lot of options for races, classes, subclasses, and backgrounds, which who doesn't like options? Number two, 5e is incredibly popular. When games are popular, it attracts more people to try them, which is only ever a good thing for us RPG players because sometimes we can have trouble finding people to play with. So the more people who get into it, the better. Number three, very little ambiguity. In D&D, there's rules and variant rules for almost everything. So there's very little ambiguity and you can play whichever way you prefer. Number four, preparation. Now, honestly, I put this as both a positive and negative for D&D, and here's why. Everything you need to know about running a module, campaign, or session is right there in the campaign book. So the only preparation you really have to do is read. However, it's a lot of reading and very difficult to memorize everything for a session. ICRPG has very little prep time required, so it's more story-driven and less rules-based game. With that, let's jump straight into the cons, starting with prep time. Since I just mentioned it, I'm going to expand on that more. When talking about ICRPG, you have to talk about the playing cards. Professor Dungeon Master's video talks about the Essentials deck, so I'll let you check him out for that, but he didn't mention the ICRPG Think deck, which is an awesome tool for creating challenges, rooms, adventures, and even campaigns. You can check out Hankrin's example in his video, see link below, but here's a quick view. So here's the Think deck. I'm just going to draw 3 cards real quick, and what I've got is I've got a Diamond Role Play Foe. I've got a Club Long Range, and I've got a Diamond Lesser Foe. So basically you use these cards as inspirational tools, as I said. So let's just start with the theme of them. You know, Diamond has to do with typically high class. So when I'm thinking the role play foe, I'm thinking someone who might be in the upper class, maybe a noble or a ruler who is going against the kingdom. A lesser foe, maybe one of his minions, or like a high-end knight who serves this ruler. Clubs are related to more brutishness, so maybe this is a a big knight, someone that uses maybe, let's just say, a war hammer as a weapon. But that wouldn't work because it's long range. So thinking of a long range blunt weapon, maybe he just has a hand cannon for, that's pretty brutish. But this is just an example. I was thinking of basing some of this challenge just using these cards for on-the-spot interpretations so that you can see how easy it is to get over some writer's block and how easy to use them for creation when you're lacking some imagination. But forget the story, forget the NPCs you need to know, forget the blocks in the module that are meant to be read out loud for a session for a second, and let's give the example of stats. Stats for monsters, stats for checks like traps, and skills used in each room like perception, investigation, etc. The characters walk into a room and you got to have all this previous stuff either close in your memory or right in front of you so that the fluidity of the game doesn't get messed up. Now imagine if all of that was just one DC. In ICRPG, you have a room DC, and everything in that room is that DC. Investigation, perception, monster AC, saving throws from a trap, picking a lock, all of this is one number. How much prep time and memory space did you just save yourself for that session if every room had a single DC? And since I brought up monster stat blocks, how many people know everything about a monster and all the numbers? In ICRPG, you still have some monster abilities, but instead of some arbitrary number for HP, they have hearts, which represent 10 HP each, usually ranging from 1 to 5 hearts. So if you're a Zelda fan, you'll really like this concept. I'll go more into that in a second, but the other thing with monsters is they usually have a plus a certain number to their rolls and all or some of their stats. You don't have to memorize their saving throws, skills, or ability scores, just hearts, abilities, and that number that they use to add to their rolls. Which brings me to number 2, slow combat, slow sessions, and scalability, because all of them kind of affect each other. And when I say slow sessions, I mean you get through very little in one session. How many people have sat through slow combats, hacking away at hit point sponges who are not even damaging you, taking up a big chunk of time in a D&D session? It's slow. Turns are relatively anticlimactic. There's very little drama, and it's not very dynamic or exciting. You have players reading through long, very wordy spells, trying to strategically work through their action economy, bogging things down. In ICRPG, you have lower HP, so your combats are much quicker. Just from that alone, you'll get through more in one session. Now, personally, I don't use initiative in combat, and for that, you can check out Dungeon Craft's video on No More Initiative. Again, see link below. Or I can springboard off that and do a video with example combats and situations. I pretty much use his system though. Side note, does this make the game more deadly? Which I think is a huge pro over D&D, because at certain levels, players seem unkillable in D&D, which really takes away from the danger aspect of the game. Now, if you like that, it's really easy to fix in ICRPG. You just give your players more hearts and boom, problem solved. Also in ICRPG, initiative doesn't end once out of combat. Turns happen in moments, hours, and days. On your turn, you tell the DM what you're going to do, and the DM resolves it accordingly. This turn-based structure organizes the table a little bit so you don't have as many lulls in a game. Again, speeding things up. It makes sure everyone feels included and you don't have people talking over others or anyone feeling left out if people tend to think a little quicker or can tend to be a little bit more assertive. As a DM, I want to make sure everyone has a turn to talk and express what their character might do. ICRPG encourages the use of round timers when in dangerous situations, and honestly, even in outside of dangerous situations, which puts tension in a dungeon crawl or even a role-playing scenario. So no long rests in a dungeon, or only a certain amount of time to persuade, deceive, or intimidate someone. You can only use your turn to perform what's called a recovery action if you're trying to regain HP in those situations, which you get 1 HP plus your con modifier, which may not sound like much, but in a low HP system, it can make all the difference. Plus, this gives actual functional benefit to the Constitution modifier. Also, everyone only gets 1 action, and attacks of opportunity aren't really a thing, so you won't have as much indecisiveness. Now, you can get abilities and magic items that give you more than 1 action or a reaction, but fundamentally, you won't. Again, making turns shorter. Then there's magic, and all the spell examples in the base rules are literally 1 to 2 line spells. So again, shortening things, making it easier to look through your spells and decide what you want to cast. And all of this only gets more difficult to keep track of as you level up, and more difficult for a DM to challenge their players, which is why most DMs don't run high-level games. Bringing me to number 3, I hate spell slots. I can't tell you how hard I tried to make a magic system to fit into the 5e system. I love Professor Dungeon Master's point that magic should have risks. In his worlds, it's like fighting with radioactive material, and yet some spells hit whether you make the save or not, while a fighter who all he does is fight with the sword can't guarantee a single hit. In ICRPG, you roll to cast every spell, but you also can cast unlimitedly. And I put quotations on that because that's really up to you as to whether or not you want to allow that as a DM. ICRPG has a couple of ways you can put a limitation on that. One of them is called spell burn, and every time you cast, you increase your spell burn. Basically, you get a d4, and when you cast, you turn over the d4, counting up, and when you hit 4, you roll a wisdom or an intelligence check, depending on what your spellcasting modifier is, and if you beat the target, you can keep casting. But if you fail, you roll that d4, and you lose your ability to cast for that many rounds. That way, you don't have players spamming cells. Another way to limit it is ICRPG's advanced magic system. You get stun points. Every spell costs a certain amount, and when you run out of magic. You can also make different levels of spells costing different amount. Professor Dungeon Master takes this a step further, and if you roll a natural 1 when casting, you roll a d20 on a crit fail table, and some pretty detrimental effects can happen when spells backfire. You can even die. Now, you might say it's really risky to leave magic up to a die roll, but I think that really evens things out between non-magic users and magic users, but I'll go into that more in a moment. But there's 2 ways you can hack this in ICRPG. One being Battle Fury die, which is a d6 that counts up, just like the spell burn. But this increases only when you fail any roll, and it restarts when you succeed. For those nights where you just can't roll well, Battle Fury die helps you out. Whatever number is up to the Battle Fury die, you just add to your roll, whatever it may be, and as I said, when you succeed, it drops back to 0. Or option 2, you can make the caster pay for a guaranteed cast by increasing their spell burn by 1, or just increasing their spell burn die to max out, causing them to roll to see if they lose their casting or not, or taking away that spell until they complete a long rest. For those moments when you really want to guarantee a spell cast. Number 4. Uneven classes. In D&D, not every class was created equal. As I just said, magic users can guarantee damage with some spells and have greater versatility because of magic. So what's the point in playing an ordinary fighter? Every martial class now has a subclass that can use magic. Nerd Immersion has done countless race, class, and subclass fixes. Nerdarchy has done dozens of how to make this character with multiclassing. Only problem here is that multiclassing can often lead to broken OP characters. And don't even get me started on OP homebrew characters. But the reason that happens isn't usually because people are trying to make a broken OP character, but they're trying to make a certain concept more often than not, but still wanting a badass character. But when it all comes down to it, it's really all just flavor. You want the feel of it to be a certain concept. And in D&D, you're probably not going to think of something that doesn't already exist in some shape or form under different wrapping paper. So why overcomplicate things? In ICRPG, it's mostly create it yourself. The book comes with plenty of examples on how to make balanced mechanics for a character, but if there's a certain flavor of an ability you want for your character, all you have to do is discuss it with your DM, and boom, done. It's that easy. I have a player in my current campaign who wants conjuration spells as a sorcerer. To begin with, he's too low level to even get that right now, but he doesn't get conjuration magic as a sorcerer. I'm going to give it to him anyway because why not? But it's so much easier in ICRPG to give him that, and I don't even have to wait until 7th level to give it to him. He can have it at 1st level the way things are written in ICRPG. If you lack the imagination, as I said, the book comes with plenty of examples and abilities and spells you can use when leveling up. But for those of you who love creating something new or recreating character concepts from movies and TV, ICRPG makes it really easy for you to do that. If you've ever homebrewed a class or a subclass before, you know exactly how difficult it can be in D&D. Number 5, the character sheet. In D&D, you can spend hours filling out a character sheet if you're doing it by hand and can end up with dozens of pages. And way less if you're using a system like D&D Beyond, but even then at the table, you can spend a lot of time scrolling through tabs, trying to find all your abilities and spells if you don't have them memorized. In ICRPG, all you need is this one sheet. Everything in the game is meant to fit here. There are only these 6 abilities, no skills, and you can only carry 20 items and only equip 10. Of course, you can use the back if you have a bag of holding, which can cheat the system, but even the spells you learn are counted as equipment, and it all fits right on here. Or you can use Hankeron's method, which is when you roll on the random loot table, he just has a set of index cards at the ready to quickly write down what the character is getting and what it does and gives it to the player, and boom, done. Just like the spells, all of the loot is only 1 to 2 lines of information, so it's really easy to quickly write something down, or you can give it to the player to write down, and they can stack cards of loot under their bag of holding card so that they know what's in it. This to me is still far less than D&D character sheet. it certainly makes inventory management a thing in the game, which I think in D&D a lot of people just ignore. But it certainly makes things more interesting. It also means you have more than just 3 attuned items, which I think is a really dumb rule. And also in this system, you will likely get to use all of your dice instead of just your D20 and maybe 1 or 2 others. But if you want more details on mechanics, just check out Professor Dungeon Master's video. Number 6, setting translation. I think it's really difficult for you to shift D&D mechanics across settings to sci-fi or modern or even backwards to like Ice Age. A system I liked a while back was really easy across settings was Savage Worlds. But again, it's a big rules-heavy game. The guys over at Hit Point Press also did a sci-fi setting rule book for 5e I really like called Dark Matter. But ICRPG actually makes it even easier because there's only 1 die when dealing damage. It makes things really simple. And to show it off, Hankerin has an example setting for Alfheim for fantasy, Warp Shell for sci-fi, Ghost Mountain for Wild West, Blood and Snow for Ice Age, and Vigilante City for, you guessed it, superheroes. And if you're worried about vehicles, ICRPG makes it really easy again. Vehicles are broken down into chunks, each chunk with 1 heart, with a max of 5 hearts. Each part of the vehicle is 1 chunk. Let's use a ship as an example. The hull is 1 chunk, sails are 1 chunk, rudder is 1 chunk, and the only things that can damage chunks are weapons that deal chunk damage. For example, a cannon on a ship, or a bolt gun or a missile on a starfighter. This makes making vehicles and moving across settings so much easier in ICRPG. Overall, ICRPG is more realistic. And I know it's all fantasy, so who needs realism? But as Hankerin says in his book, it doesn't matter if you're being stabbed with a sword, shot with a gun, or hit with magic. Mortal is mortal. Why should you get to become basically immortal in D&D as you level up? At some point, you can fall from 100 feet and walk away without a scratch in D&D. I know you can make simple changes, but why should you have to? If you want to make play like a video game character where you can get attacked by a group of goblins and your health bar just barely changes and become a god, that's fine. You can do that in ICRPG. It's very easy. You just add more hearts to your character, and it's just really easy to scale up in ICRPG from a very simple system. But it's very difficult to take a system like D&D and strip it down. Don't get me wrong. I love D&D. I've seen all of Critical Role. I have every source book and adventure 5e module on D&D Beyond and have watched countless videos from all these YouTube nerds I've mentioned in this video. And as I said at the start, they all bring many of these problems up at some point or another. I try to get through all the points quickly as to keep this video as short as possible. So if you want more information about mechanics, again, you can check out Professor Dungeon Master's video, or you can request me to make another video in the comments, or you can just purchase the Master Edition and check out the complete rule set yourself. Again, see link below. Thanks again for listening. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button if you want to see more content. Again, I'm the Nerd Doctor, here to help you diagnose what's wrong with your RPG game and help you fix it.